Welcome back to Nobody's Madness. As always, I'm your host, Nobody. Thanks for watching, and today we're going to try to get into an experiment, a way of testing energy, seeing how it affects and is intensified by different types of sounds and the relationship of those vibrations with the body. So it's taken a while to get to this point. I'm often told that I'm long-winded, I talk too much, I explain too much. But see, with this experiment, we had to go through at the very least, okay, so maybe we didn't need to go over ritual clothing and ritual environment, but these things definitely help. But we did need to go over breathing, we needed to go over the vibratory formula, we needed to go over the energy and moving it and recognizing it and moving it throughout the body, and then we needed to cover the energy centers, which was brief, the energy centers, granted, but we had to cover it so you knew where to start looking to move the energy to, because the energy centers are pivotal to this next portion. So I've been very interested in vibration, starting with the vibratory formula, which is the intonation, the attempt to get your entire being to vibrate to a certain frequency and intention, to align the self. So obviously vibration seems to play a very pivotal role in all of this. So I started looking into, tuning forks, and so I did some research into it, and you can get tuning forks that are designed to vibrate at frequencies of the chakras. I could not find I could find the tuning forks, but the frequencies given, there was no explanation as to why these frequencies were given, how they came, it would say so-and-so discovered this frequency, but it wouldn't go into the process, and I couldn't find this process anywhere, and it just started sounding like a charlatan thing. And it's not to say that it wouldn't have an effect on the body, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the effect that you want specifically. And I started thinking that everybody is different. Everybody is, people are just not the same. So one frequency for one person may work and one frequency for another may work. So it just started to all seem dubious to me, and not to mention these tuning forks are expensive, which that's fine, if they're well made, they're made out of good materials, this is understandable, But I started during one of my works with the Sephra Tifereth, going into it, and we'll get into that later, but basically on that vision journey, or invocation, whatever you want to call it, I started to just vibrate, and this is where I got into the neutral tone. This is where the neutral tone came from, and from there, this was after I started that research, because I've always been interested in the vibrations. I'd like to incorporate music more, but I started to think that so we each have our different vibratory frequencies. We're all on the same length, maybe we're within the same range, but within that range there's a lot of variety. And it got me thinking about our voices. Our voices are of a specific range. Some have bigger ranges than others, but then there's the neutral tone, which is our frequency, or reflective of our frequency. I'll try not to get into octaves and harmonies and stuff like that. So maybe our actual vibratory frequency is half of our speaking frequency, or, double or quadruple or whatever. But it is a harmony. So it is the beginning of where to find the harmony of our frequencies. So I started looking into the neutral tone. And in the progress of this, one, I found two programs that are free. You can get them, at the App Store or whatever. One is Note Recognizer. Let's see. And it's just a simple note recognizer. Hopefully that can be seen. I'm not sure. I can't see what you're seeing right now. So, but basically it just measures in frequency what tone you're making. So I started playing around with that, and just neutral tone. I didn't see what that was. Looked like 108 maybe. somewhere around 104. So I combined that with a function generator, which looks complicated, but after puttering around with it a little bit, you can figure out how to use it. There's instructions that come with it, I believe. It's a lot simpler than it looks, but it also does have some complexity, so there's a lot you can do with it. You can make beat noises, so you can do binaural stuff. It's actually a really nice function generator. Let's see, the icons. That's the function generator, and maybe I can see it in the reflection, and that is the note recognizer. Yeah, there's nothing else on here that should stand out as awkward or whatever. So, using those, I started to pay attention to the fluctuations in my voice, and not just that, but I would throughout the day check to see where my frequency was of my voice, and it did change throughout the day. It often changed. Sometimes it was lower, sometimes it was higher. The first time I did some meditation, it recorded at 93, and I was pretty low, and I was like, oh wow, that's significant. You know, if anybody's familiar with the Lima, pardon my dog chasing the cats again. So I was like, that's interesting, and so I focused on it, and I definitely noticed in the root chakra an intensification. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. So then I did it later that day, or maybe it was the next day, and I found that it was much higher. Let's see, I believe it was somewhere around, sorry, I'm just checking the function generator to see what I had saved. I believe it was around 106, between 106 and 110. Or was it the next one up? Either way, it doesn't matter. So I put that one in. Let's see, and that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so that's going to be the chest. Nope, it was a little higher than that. It was like 112. That was, and it was making my throat vibrate. I noticed it intensified at the throat because I would put the frequency that I was doing, and then I would put it into the frequency generator, and then I would meditate and listen to and listening to that sound that from the frequency generator. Sorry, my dogs are having a little conniption fit. So I would put that into the frequency generator, and then I would meditate while listening to that. Okay. And so I would feel what part of my body that frequency would stimulate. And, you know, so I would do that. I would record the frequency that I was just naturally vibrating at, and then I would play it back, and it would readily take me to, I misspoke, so I wouldn't meditate on any particular spot. I would just do the neutral tone, and then I would play that back and listen to it and see what part of the body activated. So that day it was like 112 or something like that, and it started to make my throat vibrate. Yeah, I believe it was the throat. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then I played back the 93, and it instantly drew my attention downwards. So I thought I was definitely onto something. So I was curious to test it on the other ones. So I took the difference between those two spots, and them being, and there was 5 spots altogether, you know, from root to throat. And then I subtracted the difference between the two numbers and then divided it by 5, and I got a number that was something like 7.34. And I was like, wow, that's pretty close to the Schumann resonance. So at first I went ahead and input those, and sure enough, each one, I mean, you can say that I had a preconception to this, but I try very hard, you know, to be neutral when I'm doing these things, but you know, you can argue that point. But anyway, each one, sure enough, activated each center as it went up. So I was curious. So I said it's close to the Schumann Resonance, 7.86. So I then started at the strongest one, which was the root. That seemed the closest and most powerful of all of them. All the other ones were activated, you know, they just naturally happened as I was sitting there listening to it in a very passive state. Uh, but they were not as strong. None of the other ones were as strong as the root. So I put in the 7.86, and sure enough, starting from 93, going up through all of the chakras, each one that I had tried previously was far stronger, and it seemed to coincide going all the way up at that frequency difference. And so the part of the experiment is one to see if that works for you, and also just to test the whole thing. Just one, do the neutral tone, play it back, see if a part of your body starts to have that sense of energy. Now again, if you didn't already establish that sense of energy, if you haven't worked on becoming aware of it, then this practice is going to be a waste of time. You know, if you haven't done the groundwork, you can't do the experiment, you know, and that's the difficulty when we're talking about psi work. If you don't do the groundwork, then you can't do the big experiments. It's going, you know, maybe there's a slim chance that you'll succeed or you'll have some success, but you can't just take somebody off the street, start doing experiments with psi work and expect it to work. You know, it's just, there is groundwork. There's things that you have to do to become aware. You can't start playing a tone and ask somebody, well, what part do you feel that in your body, when they have no idea what that energy even feels like in the first place. They don't know what they're looking for. It's like telling somebody to pick out a triangle who's only ever seen squares their entire life. You know, like, or, I don't know, that's not a great example, but you get what I'm saying. Without developing the awareness, the subtle awareness of all of these energies and things going on in yourself, you're not going to be able to do the more advanced work if you're not developing these basic steps that I've been building up to. And so even this one little practice, this one little experiment, requires probably ideally a couple months worth of work, and you know, the individual feeling like they have a grasp of these concepts and actually have some ability to perform these few tasks, you know, of just generating a neutral tone, you know, without influencing, just inhaling and exhaling that, and just letting the sound come out in a totally neutral fashion, and more importantly, to understand what it feels like to focus on a particular spot and just be aware of your own energy sensation. So without this groundwork, without some confidence that, oh wow, you know, I've accomplished this, this experiment is not going to do anything for you. It's not going to have any effect because you don't know what you're looking for. Once you do know what you're looking for, I believe this experiment should give you some success. And the advantage of it is, with meditation and energy, you know, just working, I say meditation because you're focusing on these individual spots, to learn from them and to open them up and let your energy flow. So the advantage here when you're working with these is you can see, based on your neutral tone, where you're at mentally for the day, you know, so, or at that particular time, not really for the entire day, but at that time. And that can give you clues as to where your mind is, where your energy is, where you're being directed to, and what may be getting in your way or what may be helping you. It gives you a starting point, and then from there, if you're feeling resistance, you know that, okay, I need to do a little work there. There's something in that area or that corresponds to that area emotionally, mentally, physically, that maybe I need to do some work on. So it gives you points of, you know, or if you're all of a sudden going throughout, you know, you're having a good day, but then all of a sudden you just get into a funk, well, this may point you in the direction of where that funk is coming from. You know, is it coming from more intellectual matters, you know, moving up into the mind or the brain? Is it coming from the heart? Are you feeling, you know, all of a sudden you didn't realize it, but, you know, you feel unappreciated? It's amazing how much of ourselves that we're not aware of until we start doing the work and start becoming aware, start waking up. This is what people talk about. You got to wake up. You know, it's paying attention to the self. It's paying attention to what's coming in and what's going out. And this little practice of the neutral tone can help you figure out where those energies are affecting you and where your energies are coming out from. And this can really help a lot on a day-to-day basis with controlling your energy, healing your energy, or letting your energy flow, which is equivalent to healing, and just being self-aware, you know, because you know, not everybody can figure out, oh, well, I feel it in my sacral plexus, and so therefore not everybody will necessarily feel the pressure or pain or, you know, energy at that point while they're busy throughout their day. But taking 2 seconds to do a neutral tone, look at the number and be like, oh, that's why I'm feeling the way that I am. And it's not just negative things. You know, maybe you're excited all day and you're happy and you're bouncing around. You can do the neutral tone and be like, oh, that's associated with this one. This is where my joy comes from. Or, you know, it just will really help every day with the work to give yourself a starting point, a place of reference that might have otherwise escaped your attention. And with things that are this subtle, and with us being as distractible as we are, you know, just being pushed and pulled all over the place, it's really a beneficial thing to have. And more importantly, you know, the easy way to, if you can get 2 points, if you can figure out 2 points, then from those 2 points, by dividing the number of points in between by the difference of the 2 frequencies, you can figure out the ratio. And I'm very curious for other people to do this experiment to see if they also find that it's very close to the Schumann resonance, and if they find that using the Schumann resonance, even if you find one and you use that, is as strong for you as it is for me. So feedback, people, feedback would be great. I would love to see a bunch of people who are experienced or aware of their energy and their centers doing this. And what this does too is, when you're really trying to get into one of these points, you can now play a frequency that is your personal attuned frequency to those energy centers. You can play that back to yourself to reattune yourself at any point in time during the day. I mean, most of us have our phones with us all the time. 2 simple apps and you can reattune yourself, and they're free. So you don't have to spend $500 on tuning forks that are tuned to some frequency that is not fully understood or explained. I mean, maybe the person who invented it fully understands it, maybe. To me, it seems more like somebody slapped a frequency on a thing, said that this will work, and started selling it, because there's that many charlatans out there. There really are. And this is just you. This is free. This is you. You know, your own energy, your own frequencies, instead of relying on somebody else. You know, do the experiment, see for yourself. There is the possibility that these frequencies are coming from the Buddhist temples and the Buddhist practices that do focus a lot on frequency and vibration, words used to unlock, also in Reiki. But are they necessarily doing the work, or are they just repeating or, you know, making up? I just found the whole thing very dubious, and just I don't want to say yeah, but it just seems suspicious to me, the way that it was presented and the lack of information surrounding the source. And also the fact that everybody is different. I can't stress that enough. Every single one of us is just a little different. And so our vibrations may be just a little different. And this way you find your personal vibrations for your centers, instead of relying on what worked for somebody else. Like, I could give you all my numbers, you know, but it's not going to do you any good, because they're my numbers, not your numbers. You know, I just feel like this is much closer to finding an effective method because it is focusing on the individual and not on some blanket thing that is supposed to apply to everybody, because I think we've all figured out that that doesn't work. You know, there is no one way. And so I'm trying to present all of this. You know, like I said, I use chakras. If you use something else, then do the same experiment on something else, and please share. You know, please share what you get when you use whatever energy centers that you use, if you already have them established. You know, don't use my method. Don't do what I do because I say to do it. I'm just giving you what I've done and how I figure things out. So and hope that it helps other people in their search. But I definitely think you should try this experiment. If you're up to it, if you feel that you have that much of an awareness and ability to move the energy, then I think it's worth your time to give it a shot. It won't cost you anything. So that's the experiment, and I'm eager to get some feedback on that. So thanks again for listening to my rambling, and hopefully this explains why I'm so long-winded when it comes to psi, because there's just a lot of groundwork that needs to be covered. There's a lot of things to get from, to get to doing psi ritual. There's just a lot to it. It's not just waving your hands around and saying some words. There's many aspects of focus that help bring us into line with ourselves. And in the end, if all you ever do is just vibrate the neutral tone and just get into deep meditation doing that, there's Raja Yoga that is just, and Hatha Yoga that is primarily just sitting in a position and breathing in various techniques, and that's it. And people have risen to nirvana doing that. You know, if that's as far as you go, then you've gone a lot farther than a lot of other people. If you're just practicing the breathing, the posture, and maybe, having a particular outfit in a particular place is helping you with that. That's all you really need to do, in my opinion, to expand your consciousness and to do psi. But if you want to keep doing more, if you want to learn the more ritual aspect of it and try to take control of your environment that way, and I'll continue to share what I've learned and what I do. So again, thanks for watching. Take care.